the most important things are the things you do every day. And if you're married, those are the things you do every day together. That's what we're talking about today on Elevate Ordinary. Well, hello and welcome back to Elevate Ordinary. I'm your host, JonMarc Grodi.
I'm Teresa Grodi, and I love our intro.
I do too. It's really
Alina
nice.
De La Torre is my spirit animal. And she chose all of those things based on knowing me and the things that we
It's really good.
think we do in our head together.
Yeah, it does. It gets across the ethos and the mission of this show, which is to elevate the ordinary little bits of life, pull them out, examine them, look for the opportunities for virtue and for grace and for service that we might be missing, we might be taking for granted, and also to exemplify how we can have good conversations around those to elevate our lives and each other's. So that's what we're talking about here on the show. And today we're talking about routines and daily habits and things like that, particularly focusing on the morning, because that's just something we've been working on lately. But we're talking about the things you do every day. So we'll get to that in a moment. I want to remind you, as always, that if you're people who listen to the show, if you like the show, if you like what we're doing, we'd love you to be partners in it. Check out elevateordinary.com to learn about how you can support the show and join the community, which can be accessed via the app at theawakenapp.io.
This episode is sponsored by Rob Huller at Key Realty. Rob's a good friend of ours, a great guy to work with when you're looking for your next family home or your first family home. He's a good guy, cares a lot about families, a lot about Catholic social teaching, a lot about ownership, the property as the art of democracy, as we've talked about on the show many times. Check him out, Rob Huller at Key Realty.
So, actually, I had a quote here. This is one of those quotes. It's so obvious that it's been said by many people in many different ways. I heard it most recently from Jordan Peterson. I can't open my iPad right now, so I'm just going to paraphrase, which is that we tend to think of the things we do every day as mundane, as trivial, but it's exactly wrong. He did say that. That's exactly wrong. Those are the most important things you do because they add up over time. You know, if every morning you make breakfast, and just the way it turns out in your family is that you're grumpy and you get angry at each other and you're yelling and stuff like that, and you do that every day for a week, for a month, for a year, that's a lot of yelling. That's a lot of.
This is really specific.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get so specific.
It's really
so fast.
specific to me.
We'll get there. The point is that if you want to make an impact in your life, don't focus on necessarily the big giant things you want to change. Focus on, how can I start with something I do every day? You eat breakfast every day. We talked about this in the past, I think one of our first episodes, about the sacramentality of the meal and how, hey, you eat breakfast every day. So why not, if you're trying to initiate family prayer, for instance, why not attach that to the daily meal that you share together every day? Like, you already do that. You already have a habit. Why not build additional good habits upon that habit? Why don't you habit stack, as some people call it? And so too here, again, it's a similar focus that if you can fix or improve or elevate some of the things that you already do every day, well, you haven't just made one good decision, you've changed the trajectory of your whole month, your whole year, perhaps the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we want to talk about today, is some of the dynamics, some of the things we've tried and failed at, some of the ways that particularly our morning, because that tends to be our most regular patterned part of our day, how it has changed over time and where we are with it now. So, yeah, we're gonna do that.
You tell me.
Any thoughts about this?
So I think that before we get into our specific life, I want to give a tool that we have used for several years now, that is really applicable to every family, to every couple, to every person who has another person who works with them every day. And the book is, we always get this wrong. We always call it
The Three Frantic Families. It's not called The Three Frantic Families. It's called Three Questions for Frantic Families.
3 Big Questions for a Frantic Family.
I still got it wrong.
Patrick Lencioni.
Yeah.
And if you're Catholic and familiar with, well, actually, it doesn't matter. He's like a huge, big business guru,
He's
motivator.
a huge, like
what is he?
Professional
like
development.
A COO or
he writes books about leadership, about organizational management, that kind of a thing. And so what's interesting, about that book is that the principles that he applies to a business or to an apostolate or whatever, I mean, they're applicable in some sense to any time, as you said, you have a group of people who need to work together.
Yeah.
What are the three questions?
The three
he
questions.
kind of has distilled his stuff down into three.
And the book is
questions.
something, I think you read it in a couple of hours.
Yeah, it's
I'm a
real
slower
short.
reader, so it took me like a day or two. It's called 3 Big Questions for a Frantic Family. And I always like to pair this book with it because this other book is like a lived version of this book. It's Jennifer Fulwiler's One Beautiful Dream.
Right.
And actually in like the Mexican restaurant chapter, they actually, her and her husband sit down and do this. Yeah. But she never actually references it, but Pat Lencioni writes a thing for the book. Like they know each other. I know there's a reason why she doesn't specifically reference this book. But the 3 questions are, what makes your family unique? Mm-hmm. What is your top priority or rallying cry right now?
What's most important right now? What are you working on? Yeah. And
how do you talk about and use the answers to these questions? So I think what we're probably going to focus on during this episode is number 2, like what is your identifying your top priority for your family now?
Well, I think all of them fit in because so one important aspect of all this is that a lot of times if you go out there and you read books about habits or routines, a lot of times they're talking about them in terms of individuals because they're speaking to individuals, people who are working on themselves. So that's good, that's necessary. But it's more complicated when you're married because you have to be doing these as a team. It's very easy to come up with all kinds of great plans about how you're going to improve yourself and great plans for the family and then go tell your wife about it.
Yeah, well, I have not gotten past the Fly Lady's first day for years because a clean and shined sink and dishes done does not depend on me solely.
Right, it's got to be a team effort.
It's like little kids and my husband. And it's like, well, I'm not going to nitpick this incredible, like all of these dishes got done. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to nitpick this, So it's like when you do take someone else's habits or when you're getting habit advice, like you have to make it your own and your family's or you're going to cause discord within the family,
Yeah. So there's really the 2 pieces of this. There's the practical ideas that you might experiment with in terms of trying to come up with, for instance, a morning routine for yourself and your family that works, that helps you start the day well, that gets in the things you need to get done. So there's the stuff, but then there's also the dynamic of you have to have a way to not just talk about this once or not just talk about this like when things explode and you're angry at each other and then you have to have a forced conversation about.
That's how all my conversations
sometimes that happens, right? You need to have a kind of a system for making sure that this is going to be an ongoing discussion. We're going to try this out. We're going to try something new in the morning, new morning schedule. But we have a system in place, and that's the third question, right? The third question for
I didn't understand that one very well.
Well, so the point is that you know who you are as a family and as a couple, that you identify that right now we can't work on everything at once. What's the next change we're trying to make? Maybe your project is trying to get our mornings to not be yelling fest. That might be the thing. But then question number 3 is, do we have a plan for how we're going to not just say this today and then forget about it? How are we going to begin to take steps, but then continue to have conversations? And so that might be a weekly date night that, hey, we're committed to. Every week we're going to get back together and talk about how this went and how we can tweak it and how we can make it better. What went great, what didn't go so great. Maybe that's a weekly date night. Mm-hmm. Maybe that in our case, we'll talk about it more, but we've rearranged our morning schedule so that every morning we're actually spending at least a half an hour or so having coffee and talking about our day, talking about our week.
Whatever is pressing at that moment.
Maybe that's the point is you need to have a plan for that because you can come up with the best plan in the world, but you have to be able to run the plan, examine how it went, and then tweak it. And you have to do that as a couple.
Yeah. And the first question you kind of just like foo-foo over, like what makes your family unique? And you're like, family mission statement. Oh, so stupid. But what what he's trying to get you to do is again stand shoulder to shoulder, like you did when you were dating. And
why'd you get married? What got you guys excited together? You know,
and if you can keep that in mind, then difficult times become seasons of life.
Right.
You know, where, oh, she's postpartum right now. I hate to keep blaming it on me, but like we women, we live by cycles. And it's stupid to ignore that. Sorry, 1980s, but it's stupid to ignore that.
I'm not sorry. Take that, 1980s.
But, you know, like, yeah, like we go through difficult patches in child rearing or like whatever, like seasons, you know, taking care of other relatives, things like that. Or just, you know, having no babysitter or something for a season of time. And it makes it so much easier to deal and to problem solve and to think about things when we have the fact that, like, yeah, we got married for a reason. And I like standing shoulder to shoulder with this person and moving forward and tackling problems. You know, it feels like the habit of doing this, it feels so good when it never feels good before you sit down and do it. I'm always resistant to it. I'm always like, I don't want to make another list. I don't want to make another plan. Everything sucks. You know, my life.
And there's a spiritual side to that, right? There's resistance there. There's demonic oppression there. There's a voice that says this can't possibly be worth the discomfort of initiating this conversation can't possibly be worth it, although it always is.
But then afterwards, you're just like, everything is better.
Right. Wow.
And
Clouds
you have
cleared.
a plan and you have a reminder of the plan and it's a small-ish accomplishable plan.
And you want to go make another baby?
Yes. Well, like a lot of times our goals are like to get me healthy enough to have another baby or to solve my problems so I feel comfortable being pregnant and my kids won't die.
Yeah. Well, I joke, but it's like that really, you know, like you want to work on your intimacy in marriage. You want to recapture your fire or whatever the people say out there.
I guess.
The thing, whatever. You never feel more sexually attracted to your wife or your husband as when you guys feel on the same page again.
Yes, no.
When you've gotten all that fluff out of the way and you're a team again. You remember, this is why we started this whole business in the first place. Is 'cause, you know.
I think that's why people take vacations together. And I'm not saying vacations are bad, but I'm saying like they bring you back together.
Yeah.
But almost like without a plan.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's just a feeling. Like, oh, we always feel so good together when we go to this vacation spot, which is true. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go to this vacation spot, but you could have this vacation spot like in your house.
Yeah.
Like continuously working on, you know, the next problem. Or, you know, whatever problems, you know, because family is just always changing. The children are always changing. Whenever we have them in a routine, something changes. Yeah. You know what I mean? We always kind of have to assess what's next. And I mean, like, I wanted to be clear, like having a marriage, it never at one point is it certain that you are going to have a good relationship. Like, it's a continuous... like a continuous turning back towards, you know, trusting in the grace of the sacrament, trusting in reality, trusting in your spouse, and then like working to attack a plan. Right. You know, once you've turned towards reality, once you've reconnected with your spouse, you know, then it's like, we're going to assess this thing, this big pressing thing. This is the thing. If we could get this out of the way, everything else would be smoother. Yeah.
And so there's two kind of areas. If we're thinking in terms of daily stuff, things that happen every day, we're going to go on to talk some more about the practicalities of food and exercise and prayer and those things that really should be part of everyday life. But you have to have a plan. You have to be kind of working on that plan, figuring out how to make it work. But even before that, this worked out really well. We talked about the three big questions first, because if you're in a marriage, the first thing then has to be making sure that you have a plan for your relationship, because otherwise you may be going down a good path in one sense individually, but making it harder to get back on one page with your spouse. That has to come first. And so if you don't have it, then in terms of those three questions for Frantic families, that number two question, the number one question, like, who are we, you know, get back, like we're shoulder to shoulder. This is a common mission. We're going to do it together. Okay, good. Number two, like, what do we need to work on now? if you don't have some sort of plan for continuing to date one another, continue to talk, to be just like you would in a business, an organization, you have to be talking to the other people you're co-leading with, you're working together with. If you don't have that for your family, you need to work on that first. And so make that your first rallying cry. Hey, over the next month, we're going to make a plan. We're going to run the plan. We're going to tweak it until we figured out how to regularly get back on the same page, to talk about what's important, to dream again, to make plans, to try things, to tweak them. We're going to work on that plan first. So that's, and again, that may not be a daily thing. We're talking about kind of a daily stuff on this episode. It may be a weekly thing, but that really needs to come first, because if you want to start tinkering with the messy daily life, you need to make sure that that's happening in the context of a partnership.
Yeah. And I don't want to pick on the fly lady. I really do at some day want to like accomplish this. I've been on this kitchen sink day.
The fly lady. So this is like, the fly lady is like
Women
somebody
know
with
what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
People who are on YouTube and Instagram know what I'm talking about. Okay. It's like a 31 days to habits like that build essentially a life without clutter and stress in your house. Nice. Okay, so sorry. But like well crap, now I don't know what I was gonna say.
You didn't want to get down on the fly lady. Yeah.
I don't remember.
Anyway.
But it was, so the way that we came about getting our new morning routine, which I realized like I'm gonna have a baby soon and it's gonna change. Things will change. Right. You know, and we'll have to revisit this again, which we do all the time. I mean, we change our schedules all the time. But the way that we came about our last morning shift was that you started, we were irritated by the way our kids act at Mass, but we can't really blame them because we can't give them individual time at Mass. And so like you were starting to take some of the kids to morning Mass.
Yeah, for a while, that was our experiment for about a month, is that I was going to daily Mass every day and trying to take kids with me every day, or at least, a few days out of the week. And so that was really good. So about a month I did that, and it was really nice.
It was really nice. And I was really grateful when he would come in the door and we'd all give him a hug or give the other communicant who was with him a hug. And like, I would speak to Jesus in my husband's chest. And it was beautiful, but it did mean that he was gone all morning and that I would have these like bouts of like resentment that I'd have to like fight with, like, no, he's at Mass. Like, this is what we decided. This is a season in life, like kind of just reminding myself this. But after a month or two, and we had kind of joked once, like, oh, we need to get you a waitressing job that's early in the morning, because if you could, me a waitressing job. That's early in the morning because I'm so extroverted, and when I can have like a happy, bouncy conversation with someone, it like makes me happy for the rest of the day.
So we've been getting up.
And then, so the way that after you went to Mass for all those weeks or whatever, and we'd even like received compliments from our priest and things like that. But JonMarc came home and he was like, you know what? I think that this time in the morning would be better spent if you and I just sit and have coffee for an hour and talk about whatever we want to talk about. Yeah. And at first I was like, no, how's that gonna, I want you to go to Mass. I want the kids to go to Mass. But then I was like, we did it a couple days, and the whole rest of my day was so much more positively interacted with the children, which was my main problem. Like, I'm just getting irritated and angry and frustrated at the kids all day. And like that has tons of repercussions in how the kids act, Yeah.
And it's funny because for the last couple of years, another a practical piece of this, right, is getting up earlier in the day so that you have time before the kids get up, right? Before you have to be at work, before you have to be at school, before you have to, begin the day with kids, is to get up early so that you have some time to get your head right before the day begins, to get some prayer done. In my case, for a while I've been getting up early. I find that if I exercise first thing in the morning, that has a real positive effect on my day. So I get up and I pray, and then I go to the gym for a little bit. And then I was, again, a couple months ago, I was going to Mass every day.
For a long time, though, you were getting up and falling asleep.
Right, for a long time.
So like you had to switch and be like, I just have to get up myself out of the house right away and exercise.
Right. Yeah. And I've gone back and forth a little bit on that one. But the point is that we've been getting up together for a while, for a couple of years now. But we hadn't really tried making, because I don't get up first thing in the morning and I'm not really ready to talk yet.
Yeah.
It takes me. I gotta get a couple cup of
ready.
coffee in, but getting up and praying and then going to the gym, and I come back in our current schedule. Again, what I was doing was going to mass, and that was really good, and I enjoyed that month that I was doing that. But I did realize actually that use of that bit of time between the gym and the kids getting up would be a perfect time for us to have coffee, because I'm fully awake now. I can have another cup of coffee. We can get our notebooks out. We can look at our calendars. And I hadn't really planned on it. I just tried it one day. And again, in the midst of these ongoing experiments with our morning routine and our daily routines, that was a real game changer. And it really connects to what we were talking about. Like, you can believe it intellectually that it's important to stay on the same page and have time as a couple and to have, quality time and dates. But you can't actually see the impact until you do it, until you do prioritize it. You can't really see all the fruit that it's going to have. That's why some of this stuff, you have to experiment with some of these pieces in your day. You have to see where they fit and kind of measure the fruit a little bit.
Yeah, never have the attitude that when something fails, this is pointless. There's no point in this. See how stupid this thing is. Like, just like think about why it failed, and what you could try to do to tweak it a little bit. And not all of our mornings have been pleasant.
No.
Like, I've picked fights and we've fought in mornings. But fights are always good. I mean, they're just ways that, like, I need to be heard or whatever. It's usually me that instigates the fighting. So yeah, no, it's wonderful. I look forward to it every morning.
Yeah. So that's been a good piece, so I think consider some things for the morning. Like, I think the getting up early, let's talk about the practical things for a moment. Like, I do think that Catholics underappreciate the practical aspects of their lives and how those are wrapped into the spiritual. We talk a lot about how we tend to compartmentalize the faith. That my Catholic stuff, that happens on Sunday or in these specific religious contexts. And then there's all the neutral stuff, my money, my time, all that. That's just practical. It's not really drawn into my faith life unless some hairy moral issue comes up. But I think that's wrong. I think that's exactly wrong. It's part of what we talk about on this show, that those things that we do every day, those practical aspects of our life, those are the daily opportunities to seize virtue, to say, no, I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this reasonably as an act of obedience to God, to the nature that he's given to me, as an act of investing in my vocation. So in my case, for instance, as a man, I've just found that getting up every morning and training, exercising, that has such a profound effect overall in terms of my strength and my energy, but also just my headspace, throughout the whole day. Like, I've seen guys joking lately that like going lifting some weights is like their therapy, but it's true. I've listened to some psychologists talking about the effect of some prolonged intense exercise, how that affects us emotionally and our stress. I found that doing a little bit of that every day has such profound spiritual and physical and emotional effects, and my stability as a man. And so because of that, I've prioritized putting that into my morning routine every day. And now that it's become just a daily little thing, it's a nice habit. It's kind of a routine I go through in the morning. That might look different for somebody else. It might fit into your life differently, but again, it's an important little daily vitamin, a daily piece of your life that may make a big difference. Yeah. I was talking about breakfast time.
Yeah, let me give an intro to that.
Yeah.
So I always cook breakfast in the morning, and we always have eggs, because honestly, it's just cheaper and easier than cereal
and
healthier. But I mean, like, when I think about the practical, sometimes like, why can't we just be like other people who have waffles in a toaster? And then I'm like, well, because then I'd have to put like 16 waffles in a toaster, and this is like I just crack eggs in a pan and they're done.
Well, and waffles, you're gonna be hungry 2 minutes later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so anyway, doesn't matter. Sorry.
But it does. That's the point.
So, like, I would make breakfast, but we would go through this, like, so I'm making breakfast, which has like multiple levels of homemaking in the kitchen. Okay. Like thinking about the day, thinking about all the tasks that need to get done, like thinking about dinner, what can I multitask at doing this right now? The kids are running through, and in the morning, I don't know why, but they just want to lay on the floor between the oven, the refrigerator, and the sink,
right there.
Which is exactly where I need to move, like every 15 heartbeat. I mean, not in seconds.
So to make a list here. So the kids always want to be in the kitchen. That is an issue.
They want to talk because they're extroverts like me.
It's a chore time for the family right before breakfast, and so there's a lot of running around and trying to coach the kids in that. Then there's the making of the eggs themselves, which for whatever reason
stresses me out.
And you're not good at making eggs. I mean, it's just you're just not. For whatever reason,
your eggs.
You've been trying for years. You're so good at everything else and all the other cooking, but for some reason, eggs you just have not been able to.
Coming out, it's all coming out, people.
The point was that for a long time, this seemed like the necessary schedule, even though it's like every morning was stressful and the eggs didn't taste very good, and there was just like yelling and things, whatever. And I'm hounding the kids, but also
trying to keep them out of the kitchen.
Yeah, but the kitchen's like the center of our house, and so like I'm trying to help them do their chores, but they're always running through, and so again, the point here is that we had tried something, it had not worked, but it took us like years to finally be like, hey, what if we like tried to shake this up a little bit?
Well, you said this, so he said, I'll make the eggs, and then I'm like, no, because you do everything all the time. And he's like, no, just let me make the eggs. You just do whatever you think on your schedule is what you need to do. You know, you want to get ahead with the day.
I think this kind of happened after we started meeting in the mornings, right?
No, I think it happened before.
Or right about the same time.
I think it happened before.
Okay.
Well, no, because you would be at mass. It doesn't matter. So
the point is it
happened around the same time.
We were talking about it, though. We had gone from a place of just letting life happen to us. We were being more intentional about talking about these things and trying to work out a plan. I mean, that's the point here.
But it is crazy how much it changed our entire day, because I just go around and get all the to-do things that were swirling in my head while I was making breakfast. Like I'm just doing.
Because you're getting ready for me to leave the house. This is part of this. Yeah. There's a temperament aspect of this. There's a daily schedule. There's a kind of work-home life balance to this. I think one thing I kind of observed is that during that time, I'm already on, and I'm working with the kids. And the kitchen is the central place of the house. And so it was very easy and natural for me to be making eggs because I'm good at making eggs. What can I say? I'm just good at making eggs. At the same time as I can be coaching the kids through their chores, and I can wrap a bunch of stuff together into one task that for whatever reason, that time of the day doesn't stress me out, but it did stress you out. So my suggestion was, well, wait a minute, why don't I just make the eggs and keep the kids doing their chores, and I can also do the dishes at the same time when the eggs are being cooked.
So he added the dishes into that.
And why don't you take this hour before I leave the house to go to work to get other stuff done? Yeah. To get yourself ready for the day. It was like the light bulb went on. I was like, gosh, this just makes so much sense.
It has worked so much better.
And we actually get to our breakfast time, and we're all in better moods, and we pray, and we have our breakfast, and then I even have some time to tutor the kids. Yeah, it's just worked out well.
It was a lot of both pride and fear on my end, that like you are taking on too much. Like you already do everything. I don't do anything. Well, you're just very available to us, and you're willing and ready to sacrifice all the time for our family. So then I'm just like. And the one thing that I'm supposed to do in the morning, like I can't even do that.
It is kind of funny, actually, in retrospect. Like you held really tightly onto the eggs for a long time, and I was like, So, but I think you make a good point that sometimes we hold on to what's familiar out of pride or fear or something else.
Yeah, just being afraid that he was going to take on too much and get burned out, and it's just a pot of eggs.
Well, and so like one step back from that, like pride and fear causes us to not be open to change and trying things new. But then the way that we address that too, there has to be in the context of knowing that, hey, we're working together, not just today, but over time, so that we can try some new things and experiment, because we're going to come back and honestly say, hey, how's this going? Is it working? Do we need to try a new plan altogether? Like you have to have that. Otherwise that really exacerbates the fear, because it's like, we can't give up our current plan. We might have no plan, you have to know that we're going to keep working together. So that's an important piece of all this.
Yeah. And I think the reason why we wanted to talk about this today was just that like marriage is like continual discernment, a life is continual discernment. I'm working right now to create a strategic plan for evangelization to families. And part of the curse of this plan is that you can't standardize the family. The church doesn't tell you what to wear, what parenting method to use for your kids. Like, it doesn't give you all of those things because the church is intelligent, or the church is, wise. And all families are different. Temperaments are different within marriage. Right. Baggage is different within marriage. Yeah. Financial situations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's all different, But the one thing that you can teach families is how to discern as a couple. You
can teach them discernment. You can teach them prayer. You can teach them virtue and principles. But again, as we talk about prudence a lot here on the show, prudence is then that touch point between all the head knowledge that then you have to apply to your actual practical life. Like, how do I be courageous in my life? What are my obligations? What are my duties? What are the practical, strategic, creative ways I might tackle those duties? And if you're married, you can't do that as an isolated individual. You're not two individuals with two halves of the marriage, two halves of the family life that you can just kind of run in parallel. There has to be working together, dealing with the mess, making a plan, running the plan, evaluating how the plan went, making a slightly different, better plan. Like that, there has to be that cycle in your life. And that's both to make your life work, but also to make your relationship work.
Yeah, you remember that episode of The Office where Pam and Michael start a paper company?
Oh, that's so good.
It's such a great episode because it really does show the nature of marriage, the nature of relationships, where when one person is freaking out, chances are the other person is not freaking out at that moment. And so you can help that person be like, okay,
let's make a list.
This is all the things. Like, actually, Michael in that kitchen, when he freaks out, is exactly what I do when I freak out. I just say, everything's wrong. This thing is wrong. This thing. And JonMarc just sits there and he's like, okay, so you've said a lot of things that you didn't like. Let's write those down.
Let's write them all down.
So I wanted to share our latest Teresa freak out and our solution to it.
Yeah, in terms of the three questions at the beginning, Lencioni's thing, this is our current rallying cry, our current answer to the question, what is important right now? What is the big thing that we're working on together right now?
Yeah.
And this was
so I was mainly freaking out about the fact that, like, there's just clutter everywhere and we don't really have furniture or space solutions.
When we wrote things down, like, again, we had one of these discussions where we just like wrote down 100 things, like all these things we could tackle. And it's like, we can't tackle all those, but here's kind of a theme that pulls a bunch of those together. Hey, we could tackle those this month.
Yeah.
Right?
And the theme that we came up with was like for this particular month. So our baby is due in March. And so for January, we were thinking, make the house a peaceful place for Teresa, essentially, before the baby. Yeah. And so we had we picked fix the living room.
It was a lot of physical
declutter,
space issues.
I guess those were the only two.
It was working on our cleaning routines.
But just sitting down and thinking well, if we could spend any amount of money to make this solution occur, I mean, not without knocking down walls, what would it be? The kids can't talk at a normal level without Teresa's eardrums exploding.
We need a carpet.
So we need a rug to mitigate the noise. I mean, it was just so simple and it was done within a couple days. You know what I mean? We need a new entryway solution. Our toilet, Teresa is plunging the toilet 4 times a day for the last several years.
After being annoyed for 5 years, we finally got a new toilet.
That's
we could have solved that 5 years ago if we just had focused. Yeah. Yeah,
and we have couch issues and whatnot. And then we have we've accumulated a lot of clutter in our many storage spaces. So going through our storage spaces and getting rid of a lot of the stuff before the baby comes will be really helpful.
This is so important, right? Because another aspect of daily routines, daily habits in the context of married life is that your priority list, what affects you, what bothers you, might be very different from your spouse's. That's something we find a lot. When we actually make that list, I'm kind of like, okay, there are 5 things on there that you say are bugging the heck out of you, which don't really bother me, but would be pretty darn easy to fix if we decided to fix them.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have fixed them because they're just not they just don't bother me that much.
Sometimes a lot of the problems are seeing, for example, before the baby comes, if we don't solve these things before the baby comes, in my mind, we're not going to solve them for another 2 years, because you never know how life is going to change after the baby comes. Yeah. And it's we still have stuff in storage boxes from 4 years ago that we've never even looked at, you know? So it's like, I'm seeing it in terms of years, and you're like, why is this even bothering you? I could just take this out to the trash right now. And I'm like, let's take it out to the trash.
Yeah. So
but anyway.
I mean, so to start to land this plane, bring it to a close, again, the things you do every day are really important because they add up. You know, if they're positive, then you're piling up the wins. If they're negative, fix it because it's the thing you do every day. So the things you do every day are important, you know, but they're a work in progress over time.
Write down your normal freakouts and then ask yourself, where is the fear in this? You know? Mm-hmm. So if you're always freaking out that the kids are in the kitchen in the morning while you're cooking, like, that's a good thing to write down and talk about.
Be really realistic about your whole needs as a person. Like you do as a person, you need to pray every day. That should be your duty as a Christian to know ahead of time, what is your plan for praying every day? If you're married, then having time in the day or the week, very intentional time where you're going to work together as a couple, you're going to talk, you're going to work things out, that has to be rock solid. And then beyond that, you know, then there's some gray area there between those things and then the duties and responsibilities of life and work and parenting and all that stuff. In there, I think it's still very smart and I think necessary for individuals to say, do I have a plan for my health, for getting good sleep, for getting some exercise in? Those practical things, again, they really add up fast. And so addressing them is important. But then again, as I said, on top of this, if you're married, this has to be a plan that you work at as a couple. You know, you have to be experimenting and making plans about the day-to-day life and troubleshooting those plans. And if you don't have a plan for how you're going to keep iterating this, going over them and discussing them and trying things over time, it's just not going to work. So you have to have that plan.
And just knowing that your life is going to change.
Yeah.
And that it's not a daunting task to think of like, we are always going to be reassessing everything, but it's like it's like running.
It's exciting
a race
when you're on
for
the same,
people
when you're
who run
together,
races.
you're working on it together. Yeah.
Or doing good at sport for people who do sports. I don't know. I'm sure
If you're into that sort of thing.
if you're type A, this is like right up your alley.
Yeah. Well, I guess, you know, one general thing we could say, and we mentioned it earlier, but like you really must take into account that when you're not on the same page with your spouse, when you're not working at that and you don't have a plan for that, then the mess of family life can look really despairing. Mm-hmm. But take it from us. Take it as like take our word for this, that when you invest in getting on the same page, you know, and getting back to that, you know, why do we get married? What do we have in common? Let's get excited again. Let's dream again. Once you work on that, then that mess becomes, as you said, an adventure, something exciting, something to tackle together, something you don't have to have all this fear for, because this is a project we're going to keep working on together, and it's fun to work on together. But you have to have that. You have to be doing it together.
Yeah, it does make you want to have more babies, because
it makes me want to have more babies.
It's not like a scary thing. It's not like I don't trust my husband to help me and I'm drowning and he doesn't see it and whatnot. Like, it's like, no matter what happens, like, we're going to figure this out and we'll make a plan, and seasons are short and we'll figure it out.
We better end this episode. I'm getting all romantic over here.
No, you're
I'm gonna
not.
go kiss you. Anyway, thanks for joining us for this episode of Elevate Ordinary. We hope there were some edifying bits of that going to help you inspire to keep running the race, keep ironing it out, do it together. If you're married, work on it together. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you like what we're doing on the show, please check out elevateordinary.com. Speaking way too fast. To learn about how you can support the show, be partners with us in this conversation, and download the app at theawakenapp.io. That's where the community is located. And once again, thank you for listening and for watching. God bless. We'll talk to you again. Talk to you again next week. Bye.
This episode is sponsored by Rob Huller at Key Realty. Rob's a good friend of ours, a great guy to work with when you're looking for your next family home or your first family home. He's a good guy. He cares a lot about families, a lot about Catholic social teaching, a lot about ownership, the property as the art of democracy, as we've talked about on the show many times. Check him out at Rob Huller at Key Realty.